In letter number 6 of 7, at the opening of the book of Revelation, these letters to the churches that Jesus tells his angels to deliver. And we've walked through several, so just in brief, here's kind of where we've been and some of the thoughts that you may have heard already. The letter to Ephesus was the first one, and we asked the question, how can I be cautious in trust and courageous in love? If I'm all love and no trust, that doesn't work. If I'm all trusting and not cautious about anything, we can go overboard either way. The letter to Smyrna, we talked about when we're under attack, our tendency is this fight or flight mentality. When we talked about where the vision goes, because when I fight, my focus is on my enemy. If I'm running away, my focus is usually on myself. But Jesus called Smyrna and calls us to place our sight and to place our focus on him. And not to get caught up in those other things. So in the midst of our fear, to look to Jesus. The church in Pergamum, as we read through that letter, you realize, like people in that church, we can have a tendency to want to hold on to some of the things of this world, as if I can have kind of one foot in both camps. I can be a part of things over here, and I can follow Jesus. And sometimes we realize the things we're holding on to are keeping us from really following Jesus. We're tempted to hold on to this world, but we're actually called and empowered to hold out Jesus to this world. And that's something a little bit different. We talked about power and authority. The power and authority that we give to other things when we allow them to lead us or define what's true. And we looked at the church in Thyatira and how they kind of did that. And we talked about holding fast to Jesus, who has all of the authority, all of the power, all of the life, the one who is the way, the truth, and the life, and how that's different, how that leads us differently. And then last week was the church in Sardis, and Jesus calls us into this tension, we said. Remember we talked about the predictable discipleship, if you will, or the predictable success, the success we find in Jesus, and it's in this tension of this Spirit-led creativity, on allowing ourselves to be led wholeheartedly by God's Spirit and into the new and different things and the seemingly risky things that he offers, and being led by the structure and the accountability of his Word and the boundaries, if you will, that our God gives us as well. And how it's not all one or all the other, but it's both all of the time. And that's what our God calls us to. And today we look at the church in Philadelphia. And I want to talk through this in two parts. And first, I want to just kind of walk through the reading that we just heard and unpack a couple of concepts there. And then a little later in our service, as we kind of finish things up, we'll talk about what that means more specifically for us and how that plays out. So first, we look at this. To the angel of the church in Philadelphia write the words of the Holy One, the true One, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens. This is a Jesus who is holy. That means he's set apart. He says he's the true one, which it kind of refers back to Revelation 1, because at the beginning of the book, in verse 5, Jesus is called the faithful witness, reinforcing that theme. But then there's this key of David. And the reference to David as an Old Testament king reminds us of the authority of the kingship, if you will, of Jesus. And then this opening and shutting. And we're going to spend some time there. I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and not denied my name. Now, I said we'd spend time on that open door, and it's kind of an important concept. It shows up right here at the beginning, and it's a big theme, but it's a little bit difficult to understand, and it's easy to miss what's being said there. So within this verse, I actually had to look at a couple of commentaries, a couple of different English versions. I tried to understand the Greek as best as I can, which is not always that good. That's why I read a lot of other people's stuff. But it's kind of difficult, I think, taking the Greek and translating it. That's why we end up with a slightly different translations in some of our English versions of these verses. One of the difficulties is we're not sure where to put the punctuation, because Greek doesn't really have punctuation. And so the sentences kind of go on and on and on and on and on and on and on sometimes, and that doesn't work so well for English. But But if we look at what's up here, my leaning is that the second sentence, I know that you have a little power, and yet you've kept my word, is intended to give us a definition. It's intended to explain what the open door is in a lot of ways. And so, if I can, there's that second sentence. If I can show you from a couple of different places that I was reading and looking at, possibly a slightly different way to understand this. There's some extra words that we have to use some extra words in English because Greek uses very few words for some concepts, and once again, it just doesn't work to string together word for word from English. It wouldn't make much sense. But I think another way to understand, just taking from the ESV, would be to say, there's an open door which no one's able to shut. You have little power, and you've kept my word, and have not denied my name. You see how it sounds a little bit different if we don't assume that there's a but and a yet. There are some linking words in the Greek, but they can just as easily be an and instead of a but, or just a sort of a way to continue a sentence. So there's an open door, and just one other version, the New American Standard Bible says it this way. I know your deeds. Behold, I've put before you an open door which no one can shut, because you have a little power, and have kept my word, and have not denied my name. In other words, the question that sort of sits between these translations is having a little power a good thing or a bad thing? Is it, you have but a little power, you only have a little power, and we're supposed to feel sorry for this church? Or is it, there's an open door here, you have a little power, you still have something left? And I think it's a little bit more that second. And I'm not alone on that. Got some good Lutheran commentaries that even back me up, so I'm feeling pretty solid in my own camp at least. But just, we'll kind of take it that far so you can understand what's happening there and some of the options at least. Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you. And we've heard that reference to the synagogue of Satan before. That came up in one of the previous letters. And there is a pointing to the Jewish people who don't believe in Jesus, not because they're directly worshiping Satan, but they are certainly being led by his lies to not believe that Jesus is the Savior, that he is the Messiah. And so there's that reference point. But really, the bigger thing with this verse, what's happening here is there's a promise given, right? Jesus is giving his church a promise. He's saying this is the first promise here. You will be sustained beyond the lies and the ridicule. I know people are talking bad about you. I know they're demeaning you. I know their words don't feel real good. But here's God's promise. Here's my promise to you. You will be sustained beyond the lies and the ridicule. And then there's a second promise in the very next verse. It says this, because you've kept my word about patient endurance, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world, to try those who dwell on the earth. And so there's one promise that you'll be sustained beyond the lies and the ridicule. There's a second promise. You will be protected from every trial. It doesn't say I'll remove every trial. The trials are coming, but I will protect you, Jesus says. I am coming soon. Hold fast what you have so that no one may seize your crown. Another way to say I'm coming soon there, a translation option, if you will, is I'm coming quickly. I'm coming quickly. Hold fast what you have. No one may seize your crown. And we heard about the crown before, right? It was the letter to the church in Smyrna. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. It's the same crown here. It's mentioned once again. To the one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. The one who conquers, that always points us to Jesus. Over and over we get this reference to the one who conquers, and we're reminded Jesus is the one who conquers. And we as his people, as members of his team, as those in his army, as those protected by him, we get to be included in that. We're part of Jesus' side. We're part of the side that is conquering, that is claiming ground. Never shall he go out of it, and I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down from my God out of heaven, and my own new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Who the church is. Remember, every time we hear that, we're reminded that while each letter is written to a specific church in Rome, or in the Roman Empire, it's also intended to be shared beyond that church. The churches are supposed to listen. We're reminded that there's 7 letters. We talked about that number 7, and the fact that 7, as it shows up over and over in Revelation, reminds us that this has to do with the fullness of God's plan, the fullness of His church, when we talk about the 7 churches. And so it's a word not just to Philadelphia, and not just to 7 churches some time ago, but it's a letter to us as part of God's church, as members of His church. Now it's interesting in this letter, since we have 7, we're able to compare, and we're able to find all kinds of things that are similar, and sometimes some things that are different in terms of their themes. And in this letter, there is no call to repent. That word shows up over and over in the other letters. There's repenting from various things, but there's no call to repent here for the church in Philadelphia. And that's shared with just one other letter, the church to the letter in Smyrna. And these 2 churches have a number of things somewhat in common. And that's the other letter I mentioned with a reference to the synagogue of Satan. So they were dealing with this tension within their city between these Christians, these Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians, and then these Jewish believers who did not believe in Jesus. And there was difficulty that existed there. There's no call to repent. There's a warning against the synagogue of Satan. There's the crown of life promised to both of these churches. And both receive a promise of protection in upcoming trials. And that's the encouragement for both of these churches that comes from following Jesus and being faithful to Him. But the other question then is, what's the call to action? Because in every one of these letters, in all 7, there is a call to action. There's something that these churches are being called to do, encouraged to do, that Jesus is calling them forward to some kind of thing. In Smyrna, it was that call, stop being afraid. There was no call to repent, but there was this, stop being afraid. Do not fear. That's how it reads in our English, but in the Greek, it kind of assumes that fear already exists. So it's not a warning about something in the future, it's a stop. Stop being afraid. And here, in Philadelphia, it's something else. And we'll walk through this text again, and we'll kind of unpack the meaning there. But right now, I'll give you this question, because this really leads us into, this is where God is calling the church in Philadelphia. How do you respond to an open door? How do you respond to an open door? Because that's where Philadelphia is called. That's where they're encouraged to go. And if this letter is for God's people and it's for us as well, then there's something in this question for us. How do you respond to an open door? We'll come back to that. We'll kind of pick up there in a little bit. Right now, I want to invite you to sing Rise and Shine.